Hello everyone, and welcome to my presentation on prediction of ductile damage in the process chain of caliber rolling and forward rod extrusion. My name is Gitschel. I'm member of the Institute of Forming Technology and Lightweight Components at Technical University Dortmund. This presentation is part of the Collaborative Research Center Damage Controlled Forming Processes, which is a cooperation of universities in Dortmund, Aachen and Cottbus, as well as the Max Planck Institute in Düsseldorf. Today I'm presenting the work of authors from IUL, Institute of Mechanics and the IBF. Before I start, I'd like to take a closer look at the difference between failure and damage and why our research group is more interested in damage than in failure. If we speak of failure, we mean macroscopic cracks in a component, like for example in a cold extruded shaft, where those typical chevron cracks, as you can see on the right hand side, may occur. Obviously, this is something we want to avoid during a forming process. Let's put failure at the side for a moment and take a closer look at damage. Damage, or ductile damage to be precise, is the evolution of voids at a microscopic scale. Such voids nucleate at inhomogeneities which are present in every steel. With ongoing plastic deformation and especially under tensile loads, these voids start to grow. Like we can see in this example of a DP800 steel. On those SEM images we can see a void growing constantly with ongoing plastic deformation. When voids grow bigger and bigger, they might reach the point of coalescence, where several voids link together and form an even bigger void. As long as the produced part does not show any cracks or any failure, the part is considered a good part. But the accumulated ductile damage during the forming process will have a big impact on the product performance, like for example the fatigue strength or the material stiffness will be reduced. For this reason, we are investigating methods that model the damage evolution in order to optimize forming processes in a way that the accumulated damage is as low as possible and the product will perform as good as possible. If we now want to assess the damage in a cold extruded part, we need to take a look at the whole process route, which consists of continuous casting, heating, caliber rolling, heat treatment, and the actual cold extrusion step. Like I mentioned on the slide before, damage evolves with plastic strain, which is the reason why we have to take a look at each and every single process along the process route. Within the Collaborative Research Center, we focused on the caliber rolling step and the cold extrusion. In caliber rolling, we are starting with a semi-finished product with a diameter of 60 mm, which is then rolled down to 40 mm, as we can see in the video. The material is heated up to 1100 degrees Celsius before the process and is then rolled in 4 passes in a so-called round oval round sequence. As you can see here, the cross-section of the product is changing with every pass. Here we can see again the cross-sections of the single passes. Like indicated by the width to height ratio, we can see that the shape is changing from oval to round and so on. During the process, a friction of 0.3 can be assumed. After the process, the material is cooled at air so that full recrystallization takes place. After the material has cooled down, it is further processed by forward cold extrusion. Here it is pushed by a punch into a die. In the tapered area of the die diameter is reduced from 30 mm to 23.4 mm. This results in an extrusion strain of 0.5. The shoulder opening angle is varied between 30, 60 and 90 degrees, which will result in different stress states. The workpieces are coated with a lubricant before the experiments, which results in low friction values of 0.04. Unfortunately, we only have access to an extrusion tool that has an initial diameter of 30 mm, meaning that we have to reduce the initial diameter from the caliber rolled parts from 40 to 30 mm using a lathe. In all the experiments we are using the case hardening steel 16Mn CRS5. To model this material we are using the standard elastoplastic material from Abaqus, with the standard steel values of Young's modulus of 210 gigapascal and a Poisson's ratio of 0.3. To model the plastic material behavior we are using strain rate and temperature dependent flow curves. These flow curves were obtained by conducting Rastegayev upsetting tests with strain rates from 0.1, 1 per second and 10 per second, and temperatures ranging from room temperature up to 1200 degrees Celsius. These recorded flow curves were extrapolated and are then used as an input for the plasticity model. In order to model the evolution of ductile damage, we are using a Lemaitre type evolution equation with the plastic multiplier lambda and the stress state dependent driving force y. In our case, we have chosen the driving force in a way that only positive stress states lead to an evolution of damage, meaning that compressive stress states do not. We also slightly modified the evolution equation by using only the three material parameters kappa, S and beta, as a sensitivity analysis has shown that for the material at hand, the standard 4-parameter version shows some correlation between those parameters, so using only 3 is sufficient. The material is implemented as a user field in Abaqus, meaning that there is no coupling between plasticity and the damage model. This is a valid assumption, as we have shown with tensile tests of cold extruded material that damage has only very little impact on the flow stress. Nevertheless, we are still using the effect of damage on the flow stress in order to calibrate the model. So we are using the gap between a compression and a tensile flow curve, so to say, in order to fit the parameters. We took the flow curve from the compression tests and modeled a notched tensile tests. By using inverse parameter identification, we fitted the force displacement curve of the notched tensile test in the simulation to the one from the experiment and obtained the three values for the material parameters given in the table at the bottom of the slide. With the material models we are now ready to simulate the processes of caliber rolling and forward cold extrusion. To do so we are using three-dimensional models with a thermomechanical coupling where we assume that 90% of the plastic work is transferred into heat. Caliber rolling is modeled by a quarter model to exploit the symmetry of the process. The mesh size we are using is on average 4 mm. To maintain this mesh size, we are using a new mesh after every pass, so we have to use a mapping scheme to transfer the results from one pass to another. Forward cold extrusion, on the other hand, is usually modeled using axisymmetric boundary conditions. Nevertheless, in our case, we are again using a quarter model as we are considering the damage distribution from caliber rolling, which is not axisymmetric. In order to transfer the damage results from the caliber rolling step to the forward cold extrusion, we are again using the mapping scheme. Due to the full recrystallization during cooling at air, the hardening effects are removed. Thus, we are only mapping the damage values from caliber rolling to forward cold extrusion. In addition, we need a finer mesh size of 0.4 mm due to the high plastic strain in the shoulder area of the forward cold extrusion process. So in conclusion, we need a mapping scheme to maintain the mesh size during caliber rolling passes and to transfer results from caliber rolling to forward extrusion and to decrease the mesh size in the forward cold extrusion process in comparison to the mesh size in caliber rolling. So let's have a quick look on how we implemented the mapping scheme. We are starting with the old mesh with the data and the new empty mesh where we want to transfer the data to. The integration points of the new mesh are at different positions than the ones in the old mesh, so we will need some kind of data interpolation. As the results in rolling remain constant along the longitudinal axis, it is sufficient to use a two-dimensional scheme. For interpolation, we take a look at the elements in the new mesh and see which elements from the old mesh intersect with the new one. Based on the surface areas that are intersecting, we are calculating weights for interpolating from the intersecting elements from the old mesh to the new element in the new mesh. After that, we are spreading the mesh in longitudinal direction to obtain a three-dimensional mesh for the forward cold extrusion simulation. The script was implemented in a combination of MATLAB and Python code. Taking a look at the simulation results, we can see that in caliber rolling, damage evolves in every single pass. Especially here in those areas close to the surface, we have a high damage evolution, so that we end up with a cross-section with high damage here close to the surface. Unfortunately, this is the area that we have to remove before the forward extrusion step, as we do not have tools with a diameter of 40 millimeters. On this slide, we can see the damage evolution throughout the whole process route. We can see the initial diameter in each forming step, marked by this dashed line, and the contour of the product with the damage contour plot after the process. So, like we've seen on the slide before, we are reducing from 60 millimeters to 40 in caliber rolling. Then we have to cut down those 10 millimeters, so we end up with this cross-section and damage evolution distribution. In cold extrusion, we can now see that we decrease the diameter to 23.4 millimeters, and then that we have a way higher damage evolution in the middle of the cross-section. If we compare the scales of the simulations of cold extrusion and caliber rolling, we can see that also the amount of damage evolution in cold extrusion is way higher. So we can conclude that the increase of damage in caliber rolling is actually negligible. To validate the simulation results, we used measurements of the damage in the experiment. This is actually not straightforward. One possible way to do so is to measure the density of the material. As the voids grow during damage evolution, the density drops slightly. So by an accurate measurement of the density, we can distinguish the amount of damage that has evolved. As local strains in cold extrusion are only constant close to the central axis, we are only considering material close to the central axis. So we extracted specimens with a diameter of 10 millimeters from the rolled material and the cold extruded material. The density of those specimens is now measured by the principle of hydrostatic weighing. As the damage variable in the simulations can also be defined with the help of the ratio of the current density and the initial density, we can calculate the current density from the damage variable. To make sure we compare the same area in the experiment and the simulation, we integrate the density in the simulation over the volume of the extracted specimen for the density measurements. When we compare the experimental results to the simulation, we see that the initial density is in perfect agreement. This is of course due to the fact that we set the initial density in the simulation to the one that we measured in the experiments. If we now go on to rolling and extrusion, we see that the density drops, both in experiment and in the simulation. So we can conclude that we have a qualitative match, but we have quite huge differences in the amplitudes. Another method to quantify damage in experiments is to directly quantify the void area fraction. To do so, scanning electron images are taken, and the backscattered electron image is used to detect potential voids. Unfortunately, it is not possible to distinguish between voids, inclusions or preparation residue by using only the BSE image. Thus, additional EDX spectroscopy is used at those locations of potential voids to distinguish between those possibilities. This method was developed in the project B04 of the Collaborative Research Center. So we applied it at different positions along the radius of the extruded part, as you can see on the left hand side. On the right hand side, you can see a comparison of the measured experimental results with the simulation. We can see again that it is possible to predict the qualitative distribution of damage evolution in the cold extruded part, but the magnitude is overestimated by a factor of about 50 in the simulation, as we can see on the different magnitudes of the axes used for experiment and simulation in the graph. All the results I have presented so far used a shoulder opening angle of 90 degrees. We also conducted experiments with shoulder angles of 30 and 60 degrees. Like we can see on the left hand side, lower shoulder opening angles result in lower damage, like we have measured wire density. The same behavior can be observed in the corresponding simulations, like we can see on the right hand side. But again, we overestimate the influence of damage. Nevertheless, the used numerical methods can already be used to optimize forming processes in a qualitative manner, like we have shown in this and the previous examples. Summarizing the results, we can say that damage evolution is rather low in caliber rolling in comparison to the one in cold extrusion, which is higher by a factor of about 5. So the influence of caliber rolling on damage evolution is negligible. For that reason, we want to focus in future on additional cold forging processes and do not do any further research on caliber rolling. The presented numerical methods already offer a good qualitative prediction of damage evolution, but show still high deviations in magnitude. One possible source of the error in the damage model is the parameter identification, where we only use the force displacement curve of a tensile test. In future, we also want to consider direct measurements of damage values like void area fractions or density measurements. Thank you for joining my online presentation, and I'm looking forward to answer your questions in the comment section.